When an inner realization first dawns upon you, it is not yet language. It is a vibration, a silent knowing that begins to reshape your inner world before your outer world can even understand it. This realization is like a seed that falls into the soil of your awareness. In its earliest moments, it is delicate, raw, sacred. It carries within it the full potential of transformation, yet it requires stillness, silence, and time to take root. If you speak it too soon, if you try to share it before it has matured inside you, you pull that seed from the earth before it can grow. The energy that was meant to expand inwardly gets released outwardly through words, and the realization begins to lose its potency. Many people feel the impulse to speak as soon as they experience insight. They want others to know what they have seen, what they have felt, what truth has been revealed to them. But the moment you speak of something still forming within, it becomes mental, not spiritual. It becomes something you think about, not something you embody. When you express too early, you exchange depth for description. You convert experience into explanation, and the sacred becomes ordinary. The awakening that was meant to reshape your consciousness becomes only a story that you tell. True realization must first become part of your nervous system, your breath, your walk, your silence. It must descend from the mind into the body, from the idea into the living pattern of who you are. When you talk too soon, you interrupt this descent. The ego takes ownership of what the spirit revealed. The mind begins to claim, I understand, when in truth, understanding is still incomplete. This is why many people who constantly speak about awareness remain trapped in the performance of wisdom instead of the practice of it. Words become substitutes for transformation, and they build an image that hides the unfinished work within. Silence, in the early stages of realization, is a form of protection. It keeps the sacred energy intact. The silence allows the insight to digest through the layers of the self, emotional, mental, and physical. It allows the realization to challenge your habits, to test your attachments, to dissolve your illusions. This process cannot be done in conversation. It requires solitude and observation. When you sit with your realization without needing to explain it, the vibration deepens. It grows roots into your being. It starts to change how you see the world, how you respond, how you perceive yourself and others. Then, and only then, when the realization becomes your nature, you no longer need to speak about it, because your presence communicates it effortlessly. When a person speaks prematurely, they often invite misunderstanding and judgment from others who cannot grasp what has been revealed. A half-grown truth, when exposed, can be misunderstood as arrogance or confusion, and this misunderstanding, when absorbed by the mind, can create doubt. The seed that was once strong becomes shaken by the winds of opinion. This is why the masters throughout time spoke little and observed much. They guarded their inner space, not out of secrecy, but out of respect for the sacred process of integration. They understood that once the energy of realization leaves through speech, it rarely returns in the same strength. Every realization carries a vibration, a frequency that refines your consciousness. This frequency needs time to adjust your inner world, to align your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. When you speak, you convert vibration into sound, sound into thought, and thought into reaction. The flow of energy that was once rising inwardly begins to disperse outwardly. And in this dispersion, the clarity fades. What was once luminous becomes conceptual. What was once alive becomes remembered. To keep a realization alive, you must nurture it with attention, with silence, with the humility to let it transform you before you attempt to share it. There is also a subtle pride that can arise when one speaks too soon. The ego wants to feel special for having discovered something. It wants recognition, validation, admiration. But spiritual realizations are not personal achievements. They are openings, moments when the boundaries of the self dissolve and truth is seen without filter. To claim that experience as mine is to close the very door that allowed it to appear. This is why silence is both humility and wisdom. You guard the realization from becoming another possession of the ego. You let it dissolve you instead of defining you. In the monastery, the old masters often said, "Let your silence prove your understanding." Because when you truly know, you no longer feel the urge to convince. When the truth settles in your bones, words become secondary. You speak only when the energy of life moves you, not when the mind demands expression. This kind of restraint is not suppression, it is mastery. It is knowing that speech has power, and power must be used with purpose. Every word spoken from realization should uplift, not display. It should guide, not impress. It should heal, not divide. In the early moments after awakening, the energy within you is sensitive. It can be shaken by distraction, drained by conversation, diluted by explanation. The more you protect it, the stronger it grows. Eventually, it begins to express itself through your actions, your silence, your discipline. People will feel it even when you say nothing. That is the mark of true realization. It radiates without needing attention. Those who constantly talk about awareness are often still trying to believe it themselves. Those who are truly awake have no need to prove it. So guard your realizations as you would guard a sacred flame. Let them burn quietly inside you until they become light. Let your silence be your teacher, your companion, your mirror. When the time is right, when the realization has matured through your living experience, your words will carry weight not because of what you say, but because of who you have become. The more you keep within, the more depth you gain. The less you explain, the more energy remains available for your own transformation. This is how the inner becomes eternal, how truth becomes being, and how wisdom turns into silence. Your spiritual practice is not for the eyes of the world. It is not meant to be performed, compared, or displayed. It is the intimate dialogue between you and existence itself, a silent rhythm that no one else can hear. In the modern world, people often mistake visibility for validation. They want to show their devotion, their rituals, their discipline, their peace. They post, they speak, they demonstrate. But what they do not realize is that every time the sacred is exposed to unnecessary attention, a part of its essence fades. What was meant to deepen inwardly becomes scattered outwardly. What was meant to purify the soul becomes a performance for approval. Your spiritual practice is a sacred ground where only stillness should witness you. When you open your practice to the gaze of others, even with pure intent, it begins to change form. The mind starts to wonder how it appears, how it is perceived, whether it is enough, whether it looks right. That subtle shift from sincerity to self-consciousness corrupts the energy of practice. The focus moves from presence to presentation. The breath becomes forced, and the posture becomes prideful, and the silence turns into expectation. Slowly, the practice loses its fragrance. It becomes mechanical, outward, hollow. The spirit that once guided it retreats, because sacred energy does not thrive where performance exists. The ancients always practiced in private. They bowed, meditated, breathed, and moved in the quiet corners of their lives. Their prayer was unseen, their discipline invisible. They did not announce their devotion because the sacred was not something to prove. It was something to preserve. When the practice is hidden, it stays pure. It grows its own roots deep into your being, untouched by praise or criticism. It becomes an unspoken rhythm of life, not a ritual of reputation. To keep something sacred means to protect it from the noise of the world, to let it live in silence so that it remains alive in truth. Many people fall into the trap of using their spiritual practices as a form of identity. They begin to speak of what they do, how long they meditate, what mantras they chant, what retreats they attend. Slowly, the ego disguises itself in spiritual clothing. It takes pride in its purity, superiority in its discipline. But when practice becomes identity, it stops being a path and turns into a decoration. True spirituality is not about showing how far you have come. It is about disappearing completely into the practice until no one, not even you, remains. The sacred work is done not to be seen, but to dissolve the one who needs to be seen. When you truly understand the power of your spiritual routine, you realize that the energy it awakens is fragile in its early stages. It is like a soft flame, strong enough to warm you, yet delicate enough to be extinguished by the winds of attention. When you share too soon, when you expose your rituals, you invite others' thoughts, opinions, and projections into your space. Each word, each gaze carries energy, and when those energies enter your sacred field, they alter it. The stillness that once nourished you becomes restless. The purity that once guided you becomes clouded by external vibrations. To protect the sacred, one must be selective about what is shared and with whom. Your practice does not need witnesses because the true witness is within you. The mind seeks audience, but the soul seeks alignment. The moment you sit in silence, breathe consciously, or bow with intention, existence itself sees you. The mountains, the trees, the air, they are your companions in practice. They need no explanation, no performance. Their silence mirrors your own. In this communion, You begin to realize that spirituality was never about being noticed. It was about returning to your natural state of awareness where nothing needs to be proved, because everything simply is. Those who display their practice often do so unconsciously. They want to inspire others, to motivate, to teach. But inspiration is not born from display, it is born from depth. When someone truly practices with sincerity, the energy they radiate naturally influences others without any word being spoken. A person who meditates with humility changes the atmosphere of a room without even trying. A being who prays in silence uplifts those around them through presence alone. The most powerful teachings are not in what you show, but in what you embody. When your practice becomes your nature, it no longer needs to be seen. It is felt. To keep your spiritual discipline sacred means to keep it simple. The fewer people who know, the stronger its vibration becomes. Every repetition, every breath, every act of mindfulness accumulates energy within you. That energy builds a temple of awareness in your being. But if you open that temple for display, if you let the world enter and evaluate it, the sacred energy leaks. The temple becomes a marketplace. To protect the temple, you must close its doors from time to time and let only silence enter. In silence, your practice gains power. In secrecy, your energy refines itself. In solitude, your devotion matures. There is a purity that can only be found when no one is watching. When you practice unseen, you are honest. There is no image to protect, no standard to meet, no applause to seek. You can fail, fall, rise, and learn without fear. That honesty is what draws the divine closer. The divine does not dwell in perfection, it dwells in authenticity. It listens to the silent practitioner who struggles but continues, who doubts but breathes, who questions but still bows. The sacred recognizes sincerity, not display. What is unseen by the world is often most seen by the universe. Every sacred practice, whether it is meditation, prayer, movement, or mindfulness, is a form of communication with something greater than yourself. It is not meant to be a spectacle, but a surrender. It is not about showing devotion. It is about dissolving into devotion. When you keep your practice private, it becomes a mirror that shows you your truest reflection. When you expose it too often, it becomes a stage where ego rehearses its lines. To keep something sacred, it must remain yours, untouched by comparison, unmeasured by others' eyes. It must be performed only before the presence of silence itself, where no praise can enter and no judgment can stay. The depth of awakening is not something that can be explained, because explanation belongs to the mind, while awakening belongs to awareness. The mind speaks in words, awareness moves in silence. The moment you try to describe awakening, you limit it. You shape the formless into form, you give edges to something infinite. What can be said about awakening is never awakening itself. It is like trying to describe the taste of water. No matter how perfectly you speak, the listener will remain thirsty until they drink. Awakening is the direct experience of truth, and truth does not fit inside the boundaries of language. Words can point, but they can never contain. People often ask those who have seen deeply, "What did you realize?" But the one who has truly awakened cannot answer in the way others expect, because the realization is not a thought, not a philosophy, not a belief. It is a shift of being. It is a silent explosion where the old self dissolves and something vast takes its place. How can you explain to someone the feeling of being the sky instead of the cloud? How can you translate infinity into a sentence? Every attempt to speak creates distance between the knower and the known. That is why the awakened ones often smile instead of answering. Their silence says what their mouth cannot. When awakening happens, it is not a single event but an unfolding. Layers of illusion fall away, and with each layer, you see more clearly that there was never anything to attain, only to remember. The deeper this remembrance becomes, the less desire there is to explain it. Because explanation is an activity of the intellect, and awakening shows you the limits of the intellect. The more you awaken, the more you see that truth is not something the mind can own. It can only bow to it. It can only be quiet before it. The moment the mind begins to explain, it reclaims control, and the mystery begins to fade. The depth of awakening also cannot be explained because it is different for every being. Each person carries a different conditioning, a different rhythm, a different relationship with life. Awakening meets each soul uniquely, speaking in the language that only that soul understands. To one, it comes as silence, to another as fire, to another as surrender. No single description can hold all these forms. The more you try to define awakening, the more you make it small. But awakening is not an experience to be measured. It is the disappearance of the one who measures. It is the falling away of every attempt to label reality. It is seeing without a seer, hearing without a hearer, existing without the idea of existence. When someone tries to explain their awakening, they often reduce the infinite to the personal. They speak of my awakening, my experience, my realization. But the moment you add my, the truth becomes distorted. Awakening is not personal. It is the vanishing of the personal. It is the recognition that the same consciousness looking through your eyes is the same consciousness looking through all eyes. When that is seen, who is left to explain? Who can speak of awakening when the one who would speak is gone? The depth of awakening lies precisely in this absence, in the silence after the story of I. Hence, language is the bridge the mind uses to cross from one concept to another. But awakening is not a concept. It is the destruction of all bridges, leaving only vastness. The awakened one no longer travels between meanings. They rest in the space where all meanings dissolve. To communicate this to someone still walking within the structure of thought is impossible. You can offer them direction, guidance, a glimpse, but not the experience itself. Words can carry a fragrance, but not the flower. The flower must be discovered directly. In the garden of one's own awareness throughout history, the great masters spoke in paradoxes because they knew direct explanation would betray the truth. They said, "To know is to not know," or "When I am silent, I speak." These phrases sound illogical to the mind, but they point to a reality beyond logic. Awakening is not understood. It is realized. It does not fit into reason, because reason operates within duality, and awakening dissolves duality altogether. The deeper you go, the less there is to say, because you begin to see that even saying, "I am awakened," is false. There is no I. There is only awareness witnessing itself. In the early stages of awakening, the mind still tries to explain. It tries to translate what it sees into thoughts, to make sense of the new clarity. But as the process deepens, the need to explain disappears. You begin to live from the realization instead of speaking about it. Your actions become your language, your stillness becomes your message. Those who are truly awake rarely speak of awakening because they no longer see separation between the awakened and the unawakened. To them, everything is the same consciousness playing in different forms. Remembering itself through contrast, the depth of awakening also cannot be explained because it is not something that can be completed. There is no final moment, no ultimate enlightenment that can be captured or described. The more you awaken, the deeper you realize awakening has no end. It is an infinite unfolding, like an ocean discovering new depths within itself. Every insight reveals another layer of mystery. Every silence opens to a deeper stillness. You can never say, "I have reached the end," because in truth there is no end, only endless expansion into the nameless. Even if you could explain awakening, language itself would betray you. Words divide, categorize, and compare. They belong to the world of opposites, right and wrong, light and dark, before and after. But awakening is beyond opposites. It is the realization that both light and dark are expressions of the same source. To explain it, you must separate what in truth is inseparable. That is why the deepest truths are always transmitted through presence, not words. A single moment of stillness shared with someone who has seen can communicate more than 1,000 explanations ever could. The depth of awakening is felt, not spoken. It is the peace that does not depend on circumstances, the clarity that remains even when confusion arises, the stillness that watches both joy and pain with equal awareness. It is the end of the search and the beginning of true seeing. To those who have not yet tasted it, words may sound poetic or abstract. But to those who have, silence becomes the only fitting language. They know that to explain is to leave the truth, that to describe is to diminish what cannot be divided. They rest in that quiet knowing, where everything is understood without needing to be said. Vision does not arise from noise. Purpose is not born in chaos. The truest direction of your life reveals itself in stillness, not in the constant movement of thought and activity. When the mind is restless, it creates desires, ambitions, and distractions that imitate purpose but are not born from it. These are borrowed dreams, reflections of society, echoes of what others think you should be. Real vision is discovered only when the noise fades, when you stop running, stop searching, and allow silence to speak. Stillness is not the absence of action, it is the foundation of clear action. It is the space where the false falls away and the essential begins to glow. Every person carries within them a deeper purpose, something that aligns with the rhythm of their spirit. But this purpose is not loud. It does not shout or demand attention. It waits patiently beneath layers of expectation and fear. The more you chase after it, the more it hides. The moment you become still, it starts to rise naturally, like the reflection of the moon appearing when the water becomes calm. In that stillness, you begin to see not what you want, but what you are meant to serve. Vision is revealed not through effort, but through alignment. You don't invent it. You uncover it. Most people believe purpose is found by thinking, planning, or achieving. But the mind cannot create something greater than itself. The mind is a tool for execution, not revelation. True purpose comes from awareness, from the quiet center that exists beneath the constant stream of thought. When you enter that space through silence, meditation, solitude, or deep reflection, something begins to unfold that is not of your own making. It feels familiar yet larger than your personality. It carries peace, not pressure. It draws you toward it, not with urgency, but with clarity. That is how you know it is real, because it does not exhaust you. It awakens you to stillness, allows you to see what is real. When you are caught in noise, you confuse motion with progress. You chase opportunities, approval, or success, mistaking them for purpose. But stillness strips away illusion. It shows you that not everything that moves is alive, and not everything that grows is meant for you. When you are silent long enough, you begin to hear the subtle guidance of your inner knowing. You begin to feel where your energy belongs and where it doesn't. You stop forcing and start flowing. This is the shift from ambition to alignment, from striving to serving something greater than your own desires. Purpose is not something you find once and then keep forever. It evolves, deepens, and changes as your consciousness expands. Just as a seed becomes a tree only through stillness and time, your purpose grows in the soil of quiet awareness. If you rush it, you damage its roots. If you expose it too early to the noise of others' opinions, it loses its strength. The process cannot be accelerated because the universe unfolds purpose according to readiness, not demand. You can only create the conditions, patience, presence, and peace in which it can reveal itself naturally. That is why the wise do not chase direction. They cultivate silence. They understand that clarity comes not from thinking more, but from thinking less. In stillness, you begin to see that your purpose is not separate from life itself. You are not here to force meaning into existence, but to awaken to the meaning that is already here. The trees grow, the rivers flow, the stars move across the sky, all without confusion or doubt. They follow their inherent rhythm. So too must you. When you are still, that natural rhythm becomes visible again. You realize that your purpose is not something you control, it is something you remember. It is the echo of the universe expressing itself through your individuality. When you align with it, effort becomes effortless, and what once felt heavy begins to move with grace. The danger of constant activity is that it disconnects you from this quiet knowing. When you are always moving, always seeking, your energy becomes scattered. You become reactive instead of intentional. You start living from fear. Fear of missing out, fear of not being enough, fear of falling behind. But stillness dissolves fear. In the silence of your own awareness, you realize that nothing can truly pass you by because what belongs to your path cannot be lost. You begin to trust the timing of your life. You stop chasing and start listening. That is the essence of living with purpose, moving not from impulse, but from intuition. When you sit in stillness, the mind may resist at first. It will flood you with thoughts, memories, and worries. It will try to pull you back into movement because it feeds on activity. But if you remain still long enough, a shift happens. The surface noise begins to settle, and beneath it, you discover an awareness that is unmoving, untouched. From that awareness, vision begins to rise. It comes not as an idea, but as a feeling. A quiet certainty that whispers, "This is the way." You may not know the full path, but you know the next step. And that is all you need. Stillness does not give you the entire map. It gives you the compass. Vision that grows from stillness is unshakable because it does not depend on validation or outcome. It arises from direct communion with truth. It is not something you convince yourself of. It is something you know in your bones. When challenges appear, you remain steady. because your foundation is not built on noise. You no longer act out of reaction, but from response. You do not chase success, you express service. You do not hurry time, you honor its rhythm. Every action taken from that depth carries power because it is rooted in clarity. And clarity is born only in stillness. The more you practice silence, the clearer your vision becomes. The clearer your vision becomes, the stronger your purpose grows. And the stronger your purpose grows, the quieter your mind becomes. This cycle deepens itself endlessly. Stillness is not withdrawal from life. It is re-entry into life with awareness. It is the space where your inner and outer worlds align. It is where the mind surrenders and the soul begins to lead. It is where all confusion fades and what remains is direction without doubt, strength without struggle, and action without noise. Or your struggles are not meant to be displayed for approval or validation. They are not symbols to prove strength, nor performances to earn sympathy. They are sacred teachers designed to reveal what still lies hidden within you. Every challenge that enters your life arrives with purpose. Not to destroy you, but to shape you. The pain you face is not punishment, it is purification. But when you seek validation for your struggles, when you begin to tell your pain before you understand it, you interrupt the process of transformation. You turn what was meant to make you wise into something that only makes you weary. Struggle is not meant to be broadcast. It is meant to be understood in silence. When you suffer, the first impulse of the mind is to explain it, to justify it, to share it. You want to be seen in your pain because being seen feels like relief. But that relief is temporary and external. True relief does not come from others recognizing your hardship. It comes from you recognizing its meaning. When you use struggle as a story to gain validation, you give away your power. The energy that was meant to strengthen you gets dispersed into words, opinions, and reactions. You start to shape your identity around your wounds instead of your healing. You become attached to the image of the one who suffers instead of transforming into the one who learns. Every struggle is a mirror. It reflects to you the places where your attachment still exists, where your expectations still dominate, where your patience is still shallow. If you pay attention in silence, you begin to see that struggle reveals the truth about your inner state more than any success ever could. Success can make you comfortable, struggle makes you conscious. It shows you how you react when things fall apart, how you speak to yourself when no one is listening, how much faith you truly hold when there is no visible reason to believe. These revelations are not for the eyes of the world. They are for you to witness quietly. Because it is in that witnessing that transformation begins. Validation from others may comfort the surface of your being, but it cannot reach the depth where true healing occurs. Healing begins in solitude, where you stop trying to explain your suffering and instead allow it to speak to you. Every pain carries a message. It says, look deeper. It says, there is something within you that must evolve. When you stop seeking validation, you begin to hear that message clearly. You begin to understand that your struggle is a kind of initiation, a passage through which your old self must dissolve for a higher understanding to emerge. But if you cling to the need for recognition, you remain stuck at the doorway, forever explaining the threshold without ever walking through it. There is a quiet strength that comes when you endure without audience, the kind of strength that no one applauds but the soul remembers. When you struggle in silence, you learn patience, resilience, and humility. You stop performing healing and start living it. You stop needing the world to understand you and begin to understand yourself. You discover that validation is not a sign of worth. It is a substitute for self-trust. The more you trust your process, the less you need others to witness it. The more you surrender to your pain without demanding acknowledgement, the more it begins to reveal its wisdom to you. Silence does not make your struggle invisible. It makes it sacred. The danger of seeking validation is that it ties your emotional growth to the responses of others. If they approve, you feel strong. If they ignore, you feel small. Your peace becomes dependent on perception. But real strength is silent because it needs no approval to exist. It does not need to announce what it has overcome. It carries itself quietly like a mountain unmoved by storms. Those who truly overcome rarely speak of it, because they no longer need to. Their presence itself radiates the calm that only comes from walking through fire and emerging whole. They no longer identify with the struggle, They embody the lesson it taught. Struggles lose their sacred purpose when they become part of your image. The moment you turn your pain into a story for recognition, you step out of your own healing. You feed the ego that thrives on being seen as the strong one, the survivor, the resilient soul. But spirituality is not about being seen as strong. It is about becoming free. Freedom comes when you no longer need to define yourself by what you have endured. You honor the struggle by integrating its wisdom, not by repeating its memory. The more you replay your pain for validation, the more you keep it alive. But when you let it teach you in silence, it transforms into light. Your struggles are private classrooms where the soul learns what comfort cannot teach. They strip away illusions, test your sincerity, and strengthen your connection to truth. The more intense the struggle, the deeper the lesson. It is through loss that you learn detachment, through betrayal that you learn discernment, through failure that you learn humility. But none of these lessons can be fully learned if you keep seeking acknowledgement. Validation keeps you focused on the external story of the struggle. Who caused it, how much it hurt, what others think of it, while wisdom lives in the internal realization that every struggle was always about you and your evolution. When you suffer without seeking validation, you begin to notice subtle things. You see how pain deepens compassion. You understand how endurance polishes the soul. You recognize that your strength grows quietly in the unseen hours of reflection, not in the public moments of confession. There is dignity in that silence. It is not suppression. It is sanctity. You do not deny your pain. You hold it with awareness until it becomes understanding. You do not perform your healing. You embody it so deeply that it becomes peace. This is the difference between using your struggle to be noticed and using it to be awakened. In every path of growth, there comes a point where words are no longer enough. You realize that explaining your suffering cannot ease it, that others' comfort cannot substitute for your own acceptance. That is the moment you turn inward. That is the moment your struggle becomes sacred. You stop needing anyone to see your journey, and you begin to see it yourself. You begin to realize that your pain is not asking for recognition, it is asking for your presence. It does not want applause, it wants awareness. When you finally give it that awareness, without expectation, without an audience, your struggle fulfills its true purpose. To awaken what is eternal within you. Energy is the language before language. It speaks before words are formed and continues to speak long after words have ended. You may choose your sentences carefully, polish your tone, and project an image with your expressions, but energy never lies. It reveals the truth of your inner state, what you feel, what you fear, what you carry, and what you hide. Before anyone hears your words, they already feel your presence. The vibration of your being communicates far more clearly than the sound of your voice. When your energy is aligned, calm, and sincere, it creates peace around you without needing to explain anything. When your energy is chaotic, defensive, or heavy, even your most beautiful words cannot disguise it. Energy is the real communication happening beneath every interaction. In silence, energy becomes even louder. When two people meet, there is a silent exchange before a single word is spoken. You feel it instantly: warmth, tension, or resistance. That feeling is not imagination, it is energetic truth. The mind can be deceived by appearance, but the body always feels the reality. This is why some people make you feel peaceful without saying much, and others drain you even when they speak kindly. The energy behind the words matters more than the words themselves. You may say, "I am fine," while your energy whispers, "I am tired." You may say, "I forgive you," while your energy holds resentment. The deeper you grow in awareness, the more clearly you begin to sense the difference. Every thought you think, every emotion you hold, shapes the energy you radiate. You cannot pretend vibrationally. You can only purify or pollute your field through your own inner work. When your heart is unsettled, it sends signals that others unconsciously pick up. When your mind is restless, your words lose power because they carry scattered energy. But when you cultivate stillness and alignment within, your words gain a quiet strength. They no longer try to convince, they simply resonate. The power of your energy is in its consistency. You do not have to speak loudly or constantly prove yourself. Your presence speaks for you. Energy reveals your truth even when you remain silent. You can say the right things, but if your vibration carries anxiety, insecurity, or hidden motives, others will feel it. You can promise peace, but if you have not found it within, your words become empty sounds. True communication is energetic coherence, when your words, emotions, and actions all move in the same direction. This alignment creates authenticity. People may forget what you said, but they never forget how you made them feel. What they remember is not your language, but your frequency. And your frequency is determined by the state of your inner world. The most powerful people are often the quietest, not because they lack words, but because their energy speaks clearly. Their calmness transmits stability. Their presence dissolves chaos. They carry no need to explain themselves because the truth of who they are is already felt. When you stand in alignment with your energy, you stop performing. You no longer use words to fill silence or justify your choices. You become aware that every movement, every breath, every gaze is an expression of your inner state. The more conscious you become of this, the more responsibility you take for the energy you offer to others. Your energy is your real introduction to the world. Before you speak your name, your vibration has already entered the room. It tells others whether you are grounded or fragmented, peaceful or restless, open or guarded. This is why self-awareness matters more than social performance. You can memorize the language of confidence, but if you doubt yourself inside, your energy betrays you. You can act humble, but if your ego is hidden behind spiritual words, your energy exposes it. The universe communicates through vibration, not vocabulary. Energy always reveals the truth because it is beyond pretense. When you cultivate awareness, you begin to sense the energy of your own being. You start noticing how certain thoughts tighten your chest, how certain emotions drain your strength, how certain intentions lift your vibration instantly. You become the observer of your own frequency. The more you refine it through silence, meditation, movement, and integrity, the more magnetic you become. People feel safe around you without knowing why. Opportunities begin to align with you effortlessly because your inner and outer worlds resonate in harmony. This is the quiet power of aligned energy. It attracts through authenticity, not effort. Energy is also contagious. The state you maintain affects everyone you meet. When your energy is anxious, you pass that anxiety to others. When it is peaceful, it becomes a mirror that calms those around you. This is why your own healing is not only for you, it is an act of service. By refining your energy, you contribute balance to the collective field. Each time you choose peace over reaction, compassion over judgment, awareness over avoidance, you shift the vibration of the space you occupy. Without a word, you become a silent teacher of presence. To understand energy is to understand responsibility. You begin to realize that your words are secondary to your vibration. You may speak gently, but if your heart carries anger, the energy will cut through your tone. You may say nothing at all, yet your calmness can heal more than any sentence. This awareness transforms how you move through the world. You stop reacting and start responding. You become intentional with your presence. Before entering a conversation, you check your energy. Before making a decision, you align your vibration. This inner discipline becomes your quiet form of communication with existence itself. The deeper your awareness grows, the more transparent your energy becomes. You cannot hide behind words anymore. People will feel the truth immediately. Your authenticity, your intentions, your state of being. This is not something to fear. It is something to embrace. It invites you to live honestly, to align your outer actions with your inner truth. When your energy and your words move as one, your life begins to flow naturally. You stop trying to prove your worth and start radiating it. You stop chasing connection and start embodying it. The more aligned your energy becomes, the fewer words you need. Silence begins to communicate for you. Ultimately, your energy is a reflection of your inner harmony. If your heart is at peace, your energy will radiate calmness. If your spirit is divided, your energy will reveal that dissonance. Words can be manipulated, but energy cannot. It is pure honesty. It tells the story your lips may never say. It carries the truth of your presence into every space you enter. That is why awareness of energy is more important than mastery of speech. Because while words may convince the mind, energy always touches the soul. And the soul does not listen to what you say. It listens to what you are